Welcome to ClayShareCon 2025. Here we are, the end of day 2. We have just one more demo for you, and then we got a giveaway. So just 2 more things happening. Right now we have Michael Harbridge here, and he is going to be doing a Raku demo. And if you have not seen a Raku firing before, well, you are going to be amazed at what you see next. So Michael has been with us for quite a few years now. I think 5 maybe? 2021, was that your first one with us? I think so. So this is our 6th, so he's been with us for 5 of them. So that's pretty good, actually. That's almost the most you can be, because for year 1, I think I did it all myself, pretty much. So we have some Raku classes on ClayShare that Michael has done with us. I've done a microwave Raku. Look. Right here, these giant pieces I made in my microwave. So yes, you can use your microwave, but Michael has got something fantastic planned. So let's head out and see what he's got on fire. You're gonna burn stuff, yes.
That burning stuff is good, yeah.
Yes.
All right, well, thanks for joining us. Thanks for having me again this year. And tonight we're going to do a Raku firing with horsehair and feather firing. And there's lots of different types of Raku, but tonight we're going to focus on those 2 things. And so I've got some pieces in the kiln here that are heated to about 900 degrees. And we're going to take those out first. And I'm going to do the horsehair and the feathers and show you that. And then we're going to kind of do it backwards. I'm going to go back into the studio and we're going to show the process of getting those pieces ready to be fired to that point. And so a couple of things that I've got here is I've got some metal tongs that I'm going to be using to remove these things from the kiln. And different artists will have different methods to this. So take a little bit that you learn from everybody on Raku and figure out what works best for you. I'm heating these pieces to 900 degrees. I'm in Wisconsin. You can see behind me outside my kiln room, it's all white. There's lots of snow out there. This morning, I think it was about 4 degrees in this kiln room. So the kiln has heated it up out here today. But I'm going to be working with these tongs to take the pieces out of the kiln. And one of the things that I did is I kept these tongs inside, and all day long I kept thinking, I'm going to forget to take these out there and we're going to go live. But I remembered them. And the reason I keep them inside is that they will be warm. If they were out here in near 0 temperatures and they're really cold and I reach in and pull a piece out, there's a possibility that piece could crack just because these tongs are so cold. So, so some people will do higher temperatures. And one of the reasons I don't go hotter than that is I find that sometimes you get a lot more what I call smoking, where when you touch the feather or you touch the hair, you get a lot of brown area around it. And so I've gone up to 1,000 degrees when it's really cold out. I did some pieces earlier today and the 900-degree temperature worked for me. So I've got them in my digital electric kiln here. I'm going to flip the camera down when I go to pull these pieces out. So you'll be able to see as I pull those pieces out of the kiln. But one of the other things that I did, because it's so cold here, is I've got a small kiln shelf in this kiln standing up, and I'll show you the stand that I have it in when we get back into the studio. But I've got that shelf in there, and I'm going to pull that shelf out. I'm going to put it over here on top of the kiln that's next to the one that we're using. And when I take the pieces out, I will set them on that shelf. And the reason I do that is because, again, it's cold. And if I take that piece out of the 900-degree kiln and I set it on top of a kiln that's maybe 40 degrees at this point, there's a possibility that that piece could split. So I want that surface to be warm. So I'm going to use the tongs to lift that shelf out. I'll set it on top of that kiln, and then I'm going to grab one of the pieces and I'll set it over there. I'll put the camera so you can see the horsehair and the feathers that I'd be putting on there. Now behind me here, I've got a table set up, and you may not be able to see it really good in the camera, but I've kind of got the hair all pulled apart on this table. And this is horsehair. And so you can get horsehair from anybody that has a horse that's brushing them. They will get loose hair. You can also buy it online. They sell it for string instruments. A lot of times horsehair is used for that. And you'll have hair from the tail or hair from the mane of the horse. And the mane usually is a little less coarse. The hair on the tail is a little bit more coarse. And so you'll usually get thicker lines with that coarser hair. I get people ask all the time, can I use human hair? Can I use my dog's hair? And generally that hair isn't coarse enough, but I have had some artists that have used their own hair. So if you've got really coarse, thick hair, give it a try. Unfortunately, golden retriever hair does not work for doing horsehair firing because it's just too light and doesn't leave enough of a mark on the piece. So when I get horsehair and I order it online, I get a big bundle like this. I have had this bundle for probably 10 years. You don't use a lot of hair, and we'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. So I'm going to flip the camera down here. You guys will see inside the kiln as I pull these pieces out. And because this kiln is only at 900 degrees, I'm not wearing gloves. And the reason I'm not is because when I pick up that hair to put it on the piece, it's really difficult with big bulky gloves on. And so I'm going to flip this lid open. When I do other raku firing, where I'm going to higher temperatures, I have a metal cable that hooks around this that can lift this lid up to a certain height. I'll usually have another person helping, or I've got a hook that I hook that cable onto to prop that lid open so I can pull pieces out and lower that lid. Because it's only 900 degrees, I'm able to lift this lid without really burning myself. I normally
only 900 degrees.
only 900, yeah. But on a cold single-digit day, it feels really good.
Yeah.
One of the other things is on an electric kiln is you should cut power to it. Normally, if other people are reaching into this kiln, I've got a lid switch on this kiln that when the lid is opened, it cuts the power to the kiln. If you don't have a lid switch and other people are going to be reaching in, just as a caution, turn the kiln off, because if those metal tongs come into contact with an element, that's a lot of power that's going to be going through. So, and you don't want that. So I'm not cutting the power to this because I've got the lid switch. So I'm going to lift this up and I'm going to pull the shelf out first with the tongs. And I'm going to set that over here on top of the kiln. And then I'm going to pull out a piece and set it on that shelf. And then I'm going to lower that lid. And you want to work pretty quickly with doing the horsehair. So I've got my hair all pulled apart here, and I'm going to take and touch this to the sides of the piece. And a lot of times people get too much hair on the piece. And so you don't want a real thick bunch of hair. And keep in mind, this is 900 degrees, and the shelf is also 900 degrees. And once I've got the amount of hair on that I want, then I can take and do some feathers. And I use a pliers with the feather, and I lay that feather down and just hold it in place and let that burn right onto the surface. And I'm going to go over onto the other side that you guys can't see. And I'm going to put another feather. On really windy days, you have to be careful with the feathers because the wind can cause those feathers to kind of poof out and fluff and not adhere real well to the piece. And I do the hair first and the feathers last because the hair takes a little bit hotter surface to burn than the feathers. And so the hair I usually do first and then the feathers. The reason I use a pliers, a needle nose pliers with those feathers, is in workshops I had people using their fingers to press the feather and their fingers were getting really close to that surface. And so I've always got pliers. I usually in workshops have people pair up with somebody so the other person that's not doing the application is holding a pliers with another feather so they can hand it to that person and they can work real quickly with that. All right, I'm going to move that piece over out of the way, and then I'm going to pull out another piece. And that shelf is still real hot, so I'm not too concerned. This one is a piece that I did. This is a stoneware piece. That first piece was earthenware, and this one is a stoneware piece. And this was done with the engobes, which we're going to talk about in a couple of minutes. And on the inside, I did, if you've ever worked with the washes, I did the copper wash on the inside, and I want to show you guys this once it cools off toward the end of our session. This one I'm not going to do any feathers on. I'm just going to do hair on this one. And the smell of the hair is just amazing.
and
Nothing better than burning hair. All right. So we've got that piece. I've got one more piece inside the kiln here. I'm going to move this one over. And I've got a real small piece inside here that's an earthenware piece. And we'll talk about the difference between earthenware and stoneware with this process. You can see the actual horsehair part of it. The preparation, it's all the same. It's really about the firing temperature that you fire the pieces to when you prepare the pieces and what types of colors you use on them. Probably the biggest mistake that people make is they overdo it with the hair and they get too much hair on those pieces. All right, so that is the basic process with this. I'm going to just go through the doorway here into my studio, and we'll go, Kevin will flip over to that camera, and then I'm going to come out in a little while toward the end and grab these pieces. They should cool off pretty quickly out here. We'll clean them up and you'll be able to see those pieces at the very end. So I'll see you on the other camera in just a minute.
I know you have questions about the glazes, everyone. Michael will go over those when he gets inside and he has the pieces. So don't worry. He'll
we're kind of doing it backwards. And so I want to show you guys now a few pieces. So this is a stoneware piece that was done with the Mako's, the white engobe on the outside. And we'll talk about the engobes, and I'm going to show you how to prep the piece and how to do the polishing. This is so smooth with the polishing, it feels almost like a matte glaze. This big bowl. So this was done on an earthenware piece. And this was, I airbrushed, I did a polished underglaze, and then I airbrushed Duncan Easy Stroke on there, which is something I've been playing around again with airbrushing. I hadn't done it in years. And I did the feather and the horse hair on here. Now, because this piece is so large, and there would be a little bit of a challenge lifting this out of the kiln. What I did with this one is I put a shelf up inside that kiln. So this was close, probably 5 or 6 inches below the lid of the kiln. And when I opened the kiln, I kind of let that initial burst of heat out of the kiln. And then I actually did the feathers and the horsehair inside the kiln while this sat on the shelf. Sometimes large platters and plates and the bowl that I'm going to show you next, I did that with, because it's quite a shock to these pieces to take them out of the kiln at 900 or 1,000 degrees. And so you can do it inside the kiln. And I had somebody asking the other day, they said, does it hurt when the hair gets on the shelf in the kiln, or if it gets on an element? It really doesn't. It burns out. The hair, actually, the carbon deposit that it leaves burns out at 900 degrees. So you might have a little bit of a hair burning smell. My kilns are in an area that opens up to the outside, so I can open that up and the smoke goes out. If your kiln is in your basement, you want to have good ventilation down there, or if it's in an inside room, have good ventilation so that you can get that smoke out of the room. This was a large stoneware bowl, and this was done with horsehair and feathers on the inside. These are decorative only. This is not dinnerware safe. I know that question will come up. And I'm going to flip the camera down because I want to show you guys something cool with this piece that I did on this piece. So the inside of this bowl, that'll show up now in the camera, the sparkles, the little stuff that you see in the background.
Very pretty.
So
what did you do?
Mako speckled buff engobe. And so what I did is around the edge of it and on the inside, I sponged a glaze called antique brass, which is this bowl below it is the antique brass. It's a metallic goldy brass glaze. And so I thought, oh, I'm going to speckle that and get all those little speckles in there with that glaze. And then I sponged on the edge. But what happens when you take that glaze back to that 900-degree temperature, you end up, it becomes more matte and you lose some of the metallic, but the little speckles in there still really sparkle on that piece. The back of this is done with the black on gobe. And so we're going to talk about those products. And I'm going to quickly apply another coat of the on-gobe. So Mako they came out last year with a bunch of on-gobe colors. And this one happens to be the speckled buff. And so I had applied 2 coats to this bowl earlier today. And I'm going to apply a 3rd coat just to the sides. I'm going to leave the bottom. We find that the on-gobes generally do not stick to kiln wash if you apply 2 coats to the bottom. If you apply the 3rd coat to the bottom, sometimes some kiln wash brands, it might stick a little bit. And so the very bottom I'm leaving. And so on-gobes are basically like a hybrid underglaze, and they polish beautifully. The pieces, if you could feel these pieces, they feel like a matte glaze when you polish them. If you don't polish them, they're porous, kind of like stoneware bisque. So I'm going to let that piece sit for a minute. And what we're looking for is for the shiny, wet look to disappear. Now this piece is earthenware. And so that tall vase that I took out first out there was done with the UG, the Mako Fundamental Underglaze. And this happens to be jade. And so I'm applying the 3rd coat to this. In this color, I can apply right to the bottom as well. I can apply the 3rd coat. Some of the fundamental underglazes, like the black, can flux a little bit when you start taking it up into that cone 5, 6, and 10 range. And so generally, some of those colors we don't recommend putting on the bottom of the ware, but on earthenware pieces, I can completely cover this with underglaze. So underglazes are basically colored slip, and the on-gobes are also a colored slip, but they're what Mako's calling a hybrid. And so I want to say it's almost more like a porcelain, it feels like to me. It's a smoother slip than the fundamental underglazes. And like I said, what we're looking for on these is for that real shiny, wet look to disappear. If I can get this picked up again. When you look at this, you can see there's still a few shiny areas on there, but these other areas are still damp. And so we're going to polish those. And I like to use either a chamois material or a facial tissue without lotion. And you can take, if you don't get that chamois material, I get these at the dollar store. They come in a big sheet. I cut them into smaller squares and I pre-wash them so that they're not so stiff. And I will use these and rub in a circular motion while that color is still damp. And you will start to see a sheen build up on that piece. The same thing can be done with underglazes and with the on-gobes. Where there's wet, shiny areas, I'm just leaving those for now, and I'm polishing the areas that are still damp. Now, if the piece gets too dry and it gets away on you and the piece gets too dry, just take a brush with some water and brush over that area, wait for the shiny look to disappear, and then you can go back and do your polishing over that surface.
It's almost like burnishing for terra sigillata.
It is. And a lot of times people, when they're doing horsehair and feather firing, they will use terra sigillata. And so you're doing kind of the same thing. And some people will burnish with stones or wooden spoons. I find that these chamois cloths or facial tissue without lotion work really well. Sometimes the tissue sheds a little bit. And that's why I really do like that chamois material. And so I'm burnishing and polishing this, and it may not show up real well on the camera. You can see a little bit of a sheen on that area where this area here that I haven't polished is a little bit duller. You can see a little bit of sheen there, and then here you don't see the sheen. And so you can visually see the sheen, And you can also, a lot of times I tell people, look away from it and rub your hands over it. If you rub your hands over and you feel an area that's kind of chalky feeling, then go back over that area. And again, if it gets too dry, just brush a little water over it, wait for that shiny wet look to disappear, and then do your polishing on that surface. I can do the same thing with the jade underglaze. This one is taking a little bit longer to dry. So I'm going to set that aside for a minute, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the hair and the feathers. So I mentioned, horsehair you can get from anybody who has a horse. If they brush their horse, they get hair, and they do sell it as well. I mentioned one of the biggest mistakes is people will take a big clump of hair like this and they will touch it to that surface of the piece. And what happens is there's so much hair there that it just turns the piece black and it's not real attractive. So what I had out there on the table was I took the hair and I kind of prepared it by just really pulling it apart and not even having a few strands like this together. I really tried to open that hair up so that I could quickly grab a little bunch of it like this, have it fanned out, and touch it. Whoops, the cork fell out. Touch it to the sides of the piece. Sometimes as you're touching it, when you touch it, it will burn and sizzle. And sometimes I'll kind of pull it and drag it a little bit to get it to adhere. The first time you're doing it, you could have a second person there wearing leather gloves or Raku gloves to actually kind of press the hair against the piece. You've got a short period when you're only heating it to 900 degrees. You've got a short period where you can do the hair and the feathers. And I mentioned that the feathers are usually the last thing that I do. So when I touch those to the surface, and I left the pliers out by the kiln, but we'll pretend my fingers are pliers. Feathers usually will kind of be curled a little bit. I always look for the nice fluffy feathers like this. Some of them will have a very solid tip or a very solid feather like the tip of this one. Sometimes you can kind of take and break that apart and open it up a little bit. But if that feather is just solid, when you touch that down on the piece, you're not going to get all of those nice little soft edges. You're going to get this solid black spear shape. And when I touch those feathers down, I usually try to press the tip of it down, and then I kind of lay the rest and I hold it there. There too, if you're doing it for the first time, you might want to have a second person there with gloves on that can kind of press in the middle of the feather. If it's a really windy day, try to block that wind. Are we? Do you want me to go back? Hold on one second. All right, how's that?
Good. Quick
Okay.
question. What temp do you bisque fire to? There's been a lot of people wanting to know.
So my stoneware pieces, I'm taking up to cone 6. So I'm doing an 04 bisque firing. I'm doing my engobe. I'm polishing. On this piece, I did glaze on the inside, and I took it to cone 6. And like I said, bigger pieces, I'll leave them sitting in the kiln. I haven't had issues with pieces splitting with stoneware. When I'm working with earthenware, I'm usually firing my bisque on those pieces to 04, and then I'm doing an 06 with my glaze firing on earthenware pieces. Now, this poor feather got a little mangled on the end, but these big feathers I get at the craft stores, and I have done platters where I have laid, and I'm going to grab this other big feather, I have taken and I've laid a feather right in the middle of the platter. And you can see how this feather kind of bows or angles. So I always try to do it again where the tip lays down first, and then I kind of push the middle of that feather to get it down. I usually will have gloves on so that I can take a glove and kind of push in the middle, because sometimes it's hard to get that spine all the way down on the piece. And what you end up leaving is it leaves a carbon deposit on the surface of the wear, and it's permanent. It's not going to fade and go away. What will affect it is heat. And so I find that around 800 to 900 degrees, that carbon will burn away on the surface. I said I would talk about kind of how I had that shelf in the kiln. So this is a sample of the shelf that was heating. And I make these silly little clay stands. Anytime I raku fire flat things like bowls and plates, I have them with different widths. And this is a very crude piece, and you can see some raku glaze on there. But I use these stands, and so that shelf was in the kiln in this stand, and I was able to reach in with the tongs and pull that out and take that hot shelf out of the kiln. The first time I tried it, I thought, well, I'm going to try it just with my gloves. It's only 900 degrees, and it was only going to take a few seconds. And leather gloves, they keep your hands cool until they don't anymore. And so 900 degrees, when I first picked it up, it was fine. And then I got about 6 inches and I was like, ooh, I'm feeling the heat through there. So don't think that with leather gloves, you can do that. There are heavier raku gloves that you might be able to do that with, but definitely use the tongs to pull that out of the kiln. All right, do we have some other questions?
We do. We have questions. So the colored feather you use, does any of the color transfer?
That is a great question. I have not had any of that color transfer from a feather. No.
And then the tongs you used, could someone just use fireplace tools instead of the raku tongs?
Yeah, fireplace tools will work. Make sure that the tips of them are clean. If they've got like creosote or a black coating on them from using them in the fireplace, take some sandpaper to that and clean that off, because otherwise you can leave black marks from the tongs on your pieces.
And back to the feathers, just to confirm, they're real feathers, not synthetic.
Correct. Real feathers, not synthetic. Yep. And real hair, not synthetic hair. Wigs will not work.
And so you can't put a wig on it. That would be very funny. It'd be a mess. So there's a lot of questions about your process, because the usual raku process is you bisque fire a piece and then you glaze it and then you raku fire it and pull it out. You did an extra step because you did your bisque and then you glazed, you did your ongo.
I did my ongo.
And then did the rim with the antique brass, was it? Is that the one?
Yep.
And then you fired that to cone 6, took it out, then put it in your raku kiln to 900.
Correct.
And pulled it out for the feathers and the horsehair, then the feathers. So it's a 3 firing process. So it's a little, it's a unique process. So it's got a little extra.
And if I was just doing a piece that was all going to be polished ongo or polished underglaze, it would be a 2 firing process. Or technically, I could get away with doing the ongo because they will work on greenware and they will work on bisque. I could do the ongo on greenware, do my polishing, fire it, cool it, put it back in, heat it to 900, and do the horsehair on there.
But if somebody didn't want to do the cone 6 glaze firing, they could do the horsehair and the feathers with a bisque, and then maybe ongo if you want, or glaze on the inside, whatever you want to do, right? But then you could just do a traditional, like more traditional raku.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention too, like some of the horsehair got on the inside of this piece. And again, this is decorative. With the horsehair that gets on, so the inside of this was done with opal luster, and the hair got on there, and it will burn and sizzle. If I take a sharp tool, I can scratch that away, or I'll use like a sanding pad. If it gets on the glaze, on the glossy glaze, and I don't want it, I can just take one of these Zem sanding sticks and I can sand that hair off. On the outside, it can be washed. I tell people, like, hand wash it, don't put it in the dishwasher. That carbon deposit is pretty permanent on there, but I wouldn't soak it in a sink. Just hand wash if you do that on a piece. And if it's food safe glaze on the inside, it is technically safe to eat out of, or dinnerware safe, I should say, on the inside.
So we had a question about what kind of clay should they use? This person used cone 6 clay, and when they pulled it out, it cracked on them. So it broke as soon as they pulled it out. So
the clay that I use, so some of this is Mako bisque. Other pieces I've built with just a buff stoneware or a white stoneware clay body, I would question how hot they were heating it. I find that if you go over 1,000 degrees, and a lot of people will go over 1,000 degrees when they're heating, and when you pull it out and it splits like that, a lot of times it's because the piece is really hot, or pieces that will retain a lot of heat. So a piece like this that has a very narrow neck on it, if this piece is in there and it's 900 degrees and you take it out, there's a lot of heat on the inside and a lot of cool air on the outside. And so sometimes that hot air doesn't escape as quickly. And on the inside, it's hot and the outside is cool, and you can get some splitting. So if you find it on large pieces, especially, or flat pieces, that's why a lot of times I leave them in the kiln like I did with that large bowl.
And the question, will the horsehair always turn black no matter what color the horsehair was?
Very good question. It will. I've had blonde hair, I've had red hair, I've had brown, I've had black. It's a carbon deposit that it leaves on there. So the hair kind of sizzles, and I'm going to quick go grab those pieces and bring them in while we answer questions, and we're going to clean those pieces up.
All right. Yeah, because we can go a few minutes over. I mean, all I'm going to do is give away 24 prizes. People can wait. So could you use stroke and coat for in your glaze firing?
So good. That's a really good question. So stroke and coat is a gloss glaze. And if you did a piece with stroke and coat and you did horsehair, the horsehair would burn on it, but you could scrape it away. If you worked at it, you could scrape it away. Generally, most people will use a terra sigillata, an underglaze, or the engobes to do that part of the process. And as I answer questions, I'm just going to show you, I take a towel and I just wipe away that ash that's on the piece. These pieces are still a little warm.
Now for the inside though, you could use stroke and coat. So if you're doing a bowl,
stroke and coat. So
kind of
this
like
piece was done using it was a new glaze last year, the micro pearl from Mako, and then I did strips of the copper wash down the edge, and that ran down inside and got a really cool pattern. It's almost got a metallic finish to it as well.
That's beautiful.
This is with a
I love
white
it.
this is on stoneware.
Could someone use goat hair if they wanted to?
You know, goat hair, I'm not sure how long goat hair gets. One of the nice things about horsehair is it's long and your hands aren't getting too close. Goat hair, I'm not sure if it gets more than a few inches long. Here's a feather, and you can see kind of the spine of the feather. I'm going to wipe that ash all away. Another feather here.
That's really pretty. Yeah, it's nice.
I guess this piece is cool enough I can actually touch it. One of the advantages to doing this in the winter is how quickly the piece is actually cool. And sometimes you'll find that you'll go over and you'll actually wash this with water as well. Sometimes you'll get some staining around the feathers, and I'll go back and wash that off with water. But basically, I'm taking a dry towel, getting all of the ash off of this piece. And this is over the jade underglaze that's polished. And this too, when you feel it, it's really smooth. When you do that polishing, you get a really nice smooth finish. The inside of this was just done with a black gloss glaze. And I'll clean the inside of that up as well.
Nice. So back to clays, folks are saying, would you recommend a groggy stoneware for this? Higher grog clays?
Yeah, so I mean, you can use a Raku clay body would be my first recommendation. A lot of Raku clay bodies can go all the way up to cone 6, but if you don't get a Raku clay body that can go to cone 6, a groggy stoneware would work as well. Some of these pieces I've done on smooth stoneware, and I've done it on earthenware. And if something's going to crack, earthenware is probably more likely to crack than even the stoneware. And so these pieces, that vase that I just did, the turquoise, the jade one, that was actually just a low fire white slip with no sand, no grog in it. It's really, when you get over that 900 and 1,000 degree temperature, a lot of times that's where I find that we get a lot of splitting with horsehair and feather firing.
Fabulous. Could you use wool? I mean, maybe.
That's a good question. I've never tried wool. I think wool might leave, if it does leave a carbon deposit, which it probably would, it's going to leave kind of blotches. You know, the horsehair is such a fine hair, but give it a try. I haven't tried wool. I'm not sure about that.
All right. So we're out of time. I know people got other questions. They can always reach out to you. What is the best contact information, Michael, to get a hold of you?
They can reach me through my website now is firedartsexpo.com. I
Okay.
still do the trade show in Wisconsin,
Yes.
and they can reach me through that website. There's a contact us through there is probably the best way to contact me.
Awesome. Well, thank you. We're going to see you again tomorrow. Is it tomorrow?
Yep, tomorrow afternoon, I think.
You're going to
Yep.
be doing the snow gems for
We're
Mako.
doing
So
no gems.
yeah. Ooh, there's a preview. So Michael's coming back. Thank goodness, right? We were afraid we were going to have a Clayshare Con without you. That just
Yeah,
wouldn't be the same.
that
Not at
wouldn't.
all. All
All
right.
right.
Well,
Thanks,
thank you
everybody.
so much. And Michael's got 3 giveaways that we're doing for $100 to spend at the Fire Darts Expo. Is that
Yep.
my understanding? Yeah. So that's an awesome prize. Well, thank you, Michael, so much. And we'll see you tomorrow. Have a great night.
All right. Thanks, you guys.
All right. That was amazing.
amazing. I know if this is the first time you're seeing Raku, you have a million questions, and there's a lot of great resources out there. Michael has done many Raku demos before. Go look on Clayshare. We've got a bunch of them. I don't know if Michael did a Raku last Clayshare Con, but maybe the one before. But there is some on there. And again, I mentioned I did the microwave Raku. Yes, you can use a microwave to Raku pots. I have a tutorial on that. And during my open studio weekend, we did Raku right here in the studio. Well, actually, we do it outside. We don't do it in the studio because of, you know, all the smoke and stuff. And my Raku kiln, which is a 52-year-old L&L electric kiln that I use. Yeah, that baby is still going. And that's outside. So, you know, I'll probably film a Raku class with that one of these days. We'll get you a full-length one. All right, so this is the end of all of the tutorials and demos for day 2 of Clayshare Con, but it is not over. We have 24 prizes to give away. We're gonna have a little break while I get everything set up for you all, and then I will be back at 6:15, so just a couple minutes, and we'll give a whole bunch of stuff away. If this is the first time you're hearing about our giveaways, well, you can enter, no purchase necessary. Just go to clayshare.com and sign up for our email list, and that'll get you in. If you are a premium member of Clayshare, you are always automatically entered in all of our giveaways. You just sit back and relax and see if your name is drawn. Thank you, everybody. Again, a huge thank you to Michael, and I will see you all